Alright, listen up. Today, we're going to be talking about the Constitution. Alright, I'm just going to apologize if I start quoting nonstop from Hamilton too many times in this video. I just can't help it. Alright, forget what government you think we should have, because honestly, whatever government you're thinking of right now, especially after the revolution, it probably sucks, okay? The Constitution is better in every way, shape, or form. And in case you didn't know, the Constitution is our new document that's going to lay out all of our rules. And inside it, it lays out the structure with things like the checks and balances system, which we'll get to more on later. Okay, so first thing, if you're still one of those stupid people who think that we don't need a government, get some tea and sit down, because I'm about to knowledge you. Government isn't bad, okay? Just because King Georgie messed it up doesn't mean we will, because we're American. And before you say anything, we actually need some form of laws to keep people from solving their problems with fire, riots, and all kinds of nonsense. Looking at you, Shay. And in case you haven't noticed, under the Articles of Confederation, America is really kind of useless. Like, we essentially have almost no form of government. All the states are almost like independent little nations. You can't pay for anything across states, and you can't really, like, defend yourselves. The Constitution was written by these smart guys, okay? They're 10 times smarter than you, and these guys also defended it with the Federalist Papers by unanimously publishing them. These guys are Hamilton, Madison, and Jay. Together they wrote 85 essays. John Jay got sick after 5, Madison wrote 29, and Alexander Hamilton wrote the other 51. Okay, so I'm gonna be talking about these papers, cause, like, I need to. Okay, so Constitution. First and foremost, the Constitution and government isn't really taking away your freedom. I know, especially after the revolution, people's first reactions to something they don't like is to go to the exact opposite of the spectrum. But what we really need to do for government is to go somewhere in the middle, and that's exactly what the Constitution is. It isn't designed to take away your freedoms. In fact, Madison argues in Federalist 10 that the role of government is to serve the public good. Serve, not take away your rights. He also goes on to talk about how factions are bad and all that stuff in this paper. But you don't really care about that, do you? Anyway, here's the quote. Complaints are everywhere heard from our most considerate and virtuous citizens, equally the friends of public and private faith, and of public and personal liberty, that our governments are too unstable, that the public good is disregarded in the conflicts of rival parties, and the measures are too often decided not according to the rules of justice and the rights of the minority, but by the superior force of an interested and overbearing majority. Basically what he's saying in that is that the government is supposed to serve the public good, but with rich people making decisions for the rich, that's not happening. So in our government, that's not going to happen. The rich aren't going to do that. He also goes on in Federalist 10 to point out that democracy and republic aren't the same thing. But that doesn't make republic a bad thing. The quote is, the two great points of difference between democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of the government in the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest. Secondly, the greater number of citizens and a greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. Essentially, in a republic, a constitution or charter of rights protects certain inalienable rights that cannot be taken away by the government, even if it has been elected by a majority of voters. However, in a pure democracy, the majority is not restrained and can impose its will on the minority. So basically, even though we're not a pure democracy, we're still not, like, evil. We're in between, and that's not a bad thing. Speaking of rights, we also have this thing called the Bill of Rights, and it essentially guarantees your rights. If you couldn't, like, get that from its name. So we're only, like, 1/3 through this video, and I am realizing how all over the place I am, and I'm just gonna apologize. See ya. Okay, so back to it. Madison also goes on to say that the government will form a happy combination of bigger issues and smaller issues, and those will be decided by the federal government and states. So the states will still be able to run themselves, just not to the same scale as in the Articles of Confederation, where the states were all essentially like individual countries instead of one collective nation. And Maddie also talks about how the government reflects human nature and goes on to say, a dependence on the people is, no doubt, the primary control of the government. The Constitution also implemented a system called checks and balances, and the system keeps the federal government from being too centered on one specific person or group/branch. Each branch checks the other branch, and it balances the government. So no kings or factions that will be able to control the government. Of course, this also keeps us from really getting anything done, as we keep going through this endless cycle of nothingness. But hey, we don't have any dictators, right? Anyway, the government will be split between the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. And the executive branch is essentially the president. Good old Excellency himself, George Washington. The legislative branch will be this branch called Congress, okay? And they'll have representatives in either the House or Senate. And before you say anything, we already had this conversation and we were doing both state size and population. The judicial branch contains the Supreme Court, and they basically solve all of our problems civilly. Abraham goes into the branches saying the executive not only dispenses the honors but holds the sword of the community. The legislature not only commands the purse but prescribes the rules by which the duties and the rights of every citizen are to be regulated. The judiciary, on the contrary, has no influence over either the sword or the purse, no direction either of the strength or of the wealth of the society. It can take no active resolution whatever. It may truly be said to have neither force nor will, but merely judgment. Excuse me, what if we don't like something in the Constitution and want to change it in the future? Well, excellent question. So there's this thing called amendments, and they'll essentially solve all your problems, even though we're pretty much wasting them on stupid things that will apply nothing to the near future, but we don't need a unanimous vote to even apply these to the Constitution. There's also the chance of the judicial branch solving issues as well. Okay, well, looks like we're done here. Okay, so if I haven't really convinced you now, I don't know what will. But, like, even if you still don't like it, we're still gonna roll with it, the new government, because we can. But if you don't like it, you could, I guess, move to Canada or something. So, yeah.